Hey everybody, it's Carm here, and finally, Fuzzy's is back and hanging out with me all day here. Yeah, I don't think he'd been on a video in quite a while, right? He's looking at me like, uh-huh. And yeah, back on with some more revisits here. Hadn't had much of a chance in the last couple of weeks to listen to a lot of records. Mostly been out of the house, just CDs in the car for the most part. But we squeezed a few in here, and yeah, we'll start right in. Some Charlie Bird, which actually was the name of the first cat I ever had in my adult life. I didn't know much about him at the time, and it was a different spelling. But yeah, Charlie Bird Delicately. Great acoustic guitarist. On here, it's partially a solo album. It's also a trio with Mario D'Arpino on flute and Joe Bird on bass, which I didn't check. I'm not sure what the relation is. Maybe either brother or son. Really pleasant album, quite romantic, especially with the flute, taking the lead. You can see a lot of recognizable tunes here. Soundtracks, mainly. Oh, we have someone else. We know what that is. Yeah, theme from The Fox, Somewhere My Love, Lara's theme from Dr. Zhivago, Valley of the Dolls, When I Look in Your Eyes from Dr. Doolittle, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, Sunrise, Sunset, Fiddler on the Roof. So yeah, a lot of recognizable tunes done in a really interesting style here. He's known for doing a lot of Latin influenced music. If you know his Brazilian Bird album, you could hear some of that on here. As it alludes to in the notes, it has kind of a Baroque feel from well, the instrumentation, but I think the pacing of the music has that feel too, which you would find in like a Baroque trio, playing Bach or someone. And I've actually been, this is around the time of year that it seems, I don't know, classical music seems to pull at me a little more as the temperatures get warmer, and just something about this time of year draws me more towards acoustic music. So this is kind of a nice transition into that. So whether you like Baroque music or more like what you could call cool jazz or Latin influenced jazz, kind of a melding of those different styles, this is definitely recommended for that. I think this came out in the early 70s, I want to say. I think around 73. And you have his other albums listed on here. But yeah, a really nice example of him in a small group setting, but also I think 5 of the pieces are solo guitar. So it's a nice blending of those. I was thinking too, if you like ECM, it's kind of a feel, to some degree, to what it's done all through its time, with the label. But, yeah, great stuff here. And next up, an artist I've enjoyed for quite a while, and kind of brings me back to my roots when I first was getting into early jazz, but even like contemporary jazz, back in the 80s. This is an artist who I'd known, I'd heard a lot on the radio back when he had WNUA, around 88 or 89. I was coming across it. Dan Siegel on keyboards. Also with Pat O'Hearn, better known as Patrick O'Hearn, and Alex Cunha, Another Time, Another Place from 1984. Really fantastic, and I don't know if this would be considered one of his lesser known albums. I know some of these tunes, I remember hearing them on the radio way back, but I think there's maybe albums like Northern Nights might be better known for. But every cut on here is just wonderful, and you could really hear Patrick O'Hearn's influence on here. Yeah, the first cut, The Picnic, it has kind of a Mark Isham feel to it. If you know his Vapor Drawings album, which is an all-time favorite here, it has a very similar feeling, rather cinematic, as of course him being a soundtrack composer. Celestial Body, that's one that I definitely remember hearing on the radio. Has almost a kind of You could imagine it being scored for like highlight films, sports highlight films. You know, someone making it to the finish line or hitting that final goal or basket. It just has a kind of anthemic, victorious feel to it. Yeah, very, very fun. Another Time, Another Place. The the title cut also is kind of a similar feel. Dramatic at times. Again, kind of pointing to something more cinematic. You could imagine, something, just it just has a strong sense of drama to it. Dark Star is a really more pleasant piece than even the title would indicate. There's a couple other. Was it the Grateful Dead? I think did a piece called Dark Star, and Harold Budd. But this piece sounds much different from their particular versions. Where Are You Now? Very melodic, very lyrical. Sounds like there's a really nice equal measure between Dan Siegel and Patrick O'Hearn. What they're doing, there's a lot of space for both of them to express what they're doing. And Alex Acuna on percussion, if you know him, he's an incredible percussionist drummer, and you could really hear him to full effect on New Jungle with more of the acoustic. You could hear some timbales in there, and a real nice mixture of the electronic and the acoustic. Real, very organic blend. Now, A Sentimental Memory, this is worth it for the getting the album for just this piece, in my opinion. Very, very evocative, very mysterioso, and you could really hear where Patrick O'Hearn came in. I think Ancient Dreams was his first album, and I think it came out the year after this album, so you could really hear, kind of, the genesis of his own playing, his own solo work, very much in there, sequencer laden, but very slow and undulating, and kind of like a very slow, dark river. Very powerful piece. Very much. If you check that piece out alone, I mean, you want the whole album. And Little Creek is very kind of short and sweet, a little more romantic than what's on the rest of the album, and probably a little closer to what Dan Siegel is known for. But just a fantastic album overall. And again, one I think that, I don't know, maybe this one might not get as much attention as his others. I'm not quite sure. I don't hear of it enough. But yeah, excellent stuff. And finally here, something a little different, a little bit newer to the collection. And this is actually a gift from my brother for my birthday back in November. He'd given me, I think it was 4 albums. Only one of them I'd heard of the artist, and he hadn't even heard of them. He knew that they were electronic and that they'd be up my alley, and I don't quite know where he came across these, but really enjoying them a lot. The Signal, by an artist with a name which I will not attempt to pronounce. He's a Polish artist, born in 1980. It was saying here that he's a composer with roots in the pre-internet subculture known as the demo scene, which I wasn't familiar with that. But it's saying how he's composed for video games, PlayStation games, as well as some soundtracks, horror films. You could hear a little bit of that in the music. It's a very, very sparse, minimal, not minimalist in style like the minimalist composers, but more of, you can hear a little bit of drawing from what you can call the Berlin school influences. The person that I keep thinking of as I hear this is Ulrich Schnaus, maybe being a possible influence, or maybe that they came up around the same time and there's a similar thread throughout the playing. But it's very it's very simple without being simplistic, and it does a lot of interesting turns here and there. There's electronic percussion, there's some beats, but it's very kind of sparse and minimal, and not techno, but it's more, it sounds like it could hint towards that, but then it goes in another direction. Really, really nice, very beautiful, and dark without being foreboding. It's more of like more of a mystery a mystery to the whole thing. The final cut on the B side, I believe that's the longest. That one's more of a dark droney, just kind of churning into the abyss kind of piece. Very, very haunting, and different than the rest of the album in the sense that a piece is almost superficially static, but you could just kind of hear, just hear the barest traces of movement there. But it's just very, it's very powerful stuff. Yeah, and this is an artist I definitely want to look further into, now that I'm being reminded here. It said he had another album which was quite acclaimed, Reality Check it's called, so I'll have to look into that. And, for those interested, it's a 180 gram vinyl, colored, so wouldn't have too many of those in the collection overall. But yeah, just a really nice piece here. If you're wondering where, if you're a fan of electronic stuff, especially earlier analog, and you're not sure, what's going on nowadays, and even I'm always finding out little things here and there, trying to stay open to exploring newer things. This is something that's will definitely be worth checking out, and I think it's in full on YouTube also. So yeah, another one definitely worth looking into. And yeah, so yeah, 3 more there. Let's see if I can reach this. There we go. Here's what's playing in the background if you're interested. Our Carlos Nakai's one of his side projects, Jackalope, Dances with Rabbits, as opposed to Dancing with Wolves, I guess. It's from 1993 on Canyon Records. He's someone I've been listening to a lot of lately, especially later in the evening. It's more calming music, solo flute albums. But here's his band here at the time. Yeah, Jackalope. I have a few things by them. You can kind of hear it's a little bit jazzier and maybe more eclectic. I don't know how well you could hear it. I have it kind of low here. But, yeah, fun stuff. So yeah, just wanted to come on, and I hadn't been home much in the last couple of weeks with work and just catching up with other things. So getting used to doing this again a little more consistently. After weeks, I think I did at least one video a week for, I don't know, maybe a couple of months. So it feels like a bit of a hiatus here. So yeah, try to come back on more regularly if time permits. So hope you're all doing well, and from both of the boys and I, their respective positions, to the next one. Peace, love, and joy.